Lord, make my life a witness of your power. Fill me with your spirits every hour. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Make my life a witness of your power. Fill me with your spirits every hour. Set my soul afire. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Make my life a witness of your power. Fill me with your spirits every hour. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Make my life a witness of your power. Fill me with your spirits every hour. Set my soul afire. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Make my life a witness of your power. Fill me with your spirits every hour. Set my soul afire, set my soul afire, oh Lord. Make my life a witness of your power. Fill me with your spirits every hour. Set my soul afire. Your faithfulness, oh God. You wrestle with the sinner's restless heart. You lead us by still waters into mercy, and nothing can keep us apart. So remember your people, remember your children, remember your promise, oh God. Your grace is enough, your grace is enough, your grace is enough for me. Song of Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you.
So, hi, everybody. Welcome. Glad you're with us tonight as we talk about the spirituality of justice and peacemaking. Glad you're here. Marty on my right, Steve on my left, and Jerry, well, he's off someplace.
He's I hope, well, I don't, are they on our Mexico?
zone?
They
I don't
would be
know.
in the,
Yeah.
they might have a little sunshine left there yet. I don't know, but he's sitting on a beach somewhere drinking a Mai Tai.
Yeah, or
He's
something.
not thinking of us at all. I thought maybe he might jump on. Well, I'll be surprised. I
Getting
thought
his phone out and looking into what we're doing.
I mean, you
and
could
everything
text him and say, you could be a part of this. Are you watching?
else. I know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. But anyway, thank you for watching us very much. So let me pray, and we're going to jump right in here to this topic of justice, which I think we need to talk about. It's a very important one. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we need to be a people of justice. We need to be a people that are about your justice, your ways of thinking, your mind, your heart, that we can instill your heart and your mind into the social systems that are involved in our country and our world today. So bless us as hopefully whenever this is all done, all of us understand justice, what it is, and most especially our part in it. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So,
It's a toughie.
yeah.
And you're right. It's probably something that we need to talk about. But when I started it, and I've said this before, this is a deep book. I mean, this isn't something you're going to take down and read it all in one night.
No.
I mean, it's tough if you're going to get anything out of it. And
A lot of books like that for me.
You read
I don't read fast, that's for sure.
but you read so much.
Yeah, I just
So
I'm a
you
plotter.
say you don't read fast. I wonder if your speed versus other people's speed. What do you think, Steve? Would he be a fast reader?
I would think so.
Oh, I
Just
would think so
quantity,
too. You
know.
can't write. You can't read hundreds of books a year without being not a speed reader, but
I don't
reading.
read that many. So, but I just
He
keep going. I
absorbed
just
it,
Go in the house.
I just plot
Go in
around.
the house and look for books. It won't be hard to find them. They're everywhere. All right. So the chapter if you're following along with the book, The Holy Longing, this is chapter 8, which he titles "A Spirituality of Justice and Peacemaking." It's mostly about justice.
Yes.
Justice and peacemaking, but he doesn't talk a lot about peacemaking.
He talks about in the nonviolent part, which we may get to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he starts off by saying, God asks only one thing of us, that we act justly, love tenderly, and walk humbly with our God. And as I read that, I thought that's like the little primer at the beginning of the chapter. And I'm thinking, well, we don't act justly, we don't love tenderly, and we don't walk humbly with our God. If we're going to be honest as a society, we don't do any of that.
Oh, okay.
Not a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Not a lot. You're
So,
right,
and then he says, what does it mean to act justly, and how is justice different from private charity? And when I read that, I thought, okay, the charity part, I give money to our, what do we give?
Assistance ministry.
Assistance ministry. And I do. I give, I throw a $20 bill in a basket every month because I know they're helping people.
They truly do.
But that's not being
No.
acting justly, loving tenderly, and walking humbly with our God.
Right.
So where did we get off that path? Do you agree with me that a lot of
Oh,
we
I don't know that
that
we're ever on the path.
Okay,
The truth.
why?
I don't know that we take our faith seriously in most especially this area of justice. I think we allow our social systems to have their way. And I think that we allow our social systems, and most especially our political ones, I don't want to get controversial right from the get-go, especially our whole culture, but I think let's put it this way. I was watching a little bit of football here today and everything else, and we have all these commercials. Mm-hmm. We allow commercials to run our lives a little bit. So we have a culture of consumerism, which, by the way, I hate the word. I'm not just a consumer. Now, think about that for a moment, folks. Are we just a bunch of people that consume stuff? Now, you might sarcastically say to me, yeah, that's exactly what we are. But we're more than all of that. And so we have stuff, and we keep on having more stuff, and
Right.
all that influences us.
Yep.
And then we have our political world that influences us. And seemingly, we kind of throw our faith out the window whenever our politics is concerned. And as one person said one time, people surrender their religion and politics every single day. And so I think we do all that, and we therefore then don't walk justly and love tenderly and walk humbly with our God. And in that paragraph right below that, then he goes on to give us different ways in which we can begin to act justly.
But we all agree. I don't mean to belabor this point, but I just want people to understand. If you think you do those three things, I'm not criticizing you, but I'm telling you that in the way they are construed, the way they were meant, the way Jesus taught it, you're not doing that.
We're not.
We can tell as a society we're not doing that.
Our culture sways us has tremendous influence on us that keeps us away from that particular quote from Micah.
All right, you want to talk about the paragraph below it.
Well, just-
I just wanted to reemphasize, I'm not being critical of people because I'm as guilty of that as anybody. I just think that we've kind of lost, and it was interesting when I said to you, how'd we get off that path? And you said, I'm not sure we were ever on that path. I agree.
Not in my lifetime.
No, it's like, and it's only gotten worse. Steve and I were talking before about social media and stuff. I mean, it's like we live in a world and it's just out of control.
Oh, there's another one that influences us over.
Go to
and
the
over
character
again,
because we'll get stuck here. We'll never get past page one.
Okay. But anyway, as far as that, and he goes on to give a quick series of questions of the different topics he tries to deal with in this particular which we're going to talk about a bunch of them in this particular chapter. First of all, how is justice different from private charity? That's a big question. We talked about that today at Mass.
Right.
Moreover, what should be the energy behind the action for justice so that our actions do not mimic the violence and injustice they are trying to change? Oftentimes, we're trying to change something. And you're going to talk about the abortion issue, and I think this is one of them we can talk about here, how oftentimes our actions mimic the people who are pro-abortion. And so how are we going to change their minds if our actions mimic them? How do we help victims without creating further victims ourselves? These are really complex questions that we need to ask ourselves and look at how we act justly. It isn't just that we act justly like, I believe I am for life, but I have to be for life in such a way that I'm not going to kill you because I'm for life. I have to, or even kill you psychologically or emotionally in some fashion. I have to be careful because how Jesus engaged these particular issues. And so I think that paragraph is significant.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You told this parable in church this morning, and again, I was at the 11. You told it at 8:30. You told it yesterday at 4 o'clock. It's in your homily, and he uses it to demonstrate what he says is the fact that justice goes beyond private charity, which is kind of what we were talking about there. You throw money in a basket and you think, well, that's good. Well, it's a lot more than just that.
Right.
But he tells the story, and I'm going to let you pick it up, of this parable of the river, the town by the bend in the river, which I found fascinating. In fact, when I started to read it, and I'm thinking, and I would like you to expand it, but when I started to read it, I'm going, oh, come on, and then the more I thought about it, I went, no, wait, yeah, now I get it. Sometimes I forget about what parables are intended to be.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they say, well, the parable said, okay, that was a story to illustrate. That's not telling, like there weren't bodies floating down this river for years.
For years.
At least I hope not, if they're, but go ahead.
Which I left that out of the story. But folks,
still,
forgive me for telling the story very quickly to those who don't have the book and those who weren't at Mass this weekend. Maybe other people are watching us from our Mother SARS. Once upon a time, there was this town around the bend of a particular river. And one day these children were playing by the river. Right. And so all of a sudden they see these bodies floating down the river. And so they get help and they rescue these bodies, and one is dead and they bury him. The other one is sick. They put him in a hospital. The other one is a child which they give to a family to care and nurture. Well, after this occurs, this happens every single day. All of a sudden, there's these bodies coming down, and like the charitable people that they are, the good people they are, they rescue them each time. And the ones that are dead, they bury them. The ones that are sick, they put in the hospital. And the ones that are little children, they give them the families and nurture them. Now, here's something I left out of all this, which I think is interesting, which I didn't say because I didn't want to get too long with it. And this paragraph says, this went on for years. Imagine such a thing. Each day brought its quota of bodies, and the townfolk not only came to expect a number of bodies each day, but also worked to develop more elaborate systems for picking them out of the river and tending to them. Some of the townfolk became quite generous. Actually, they quit their jobs so that they might tend to this concern full time.
Yep.
And the town itself felt a certain healthy pride in their generosity. But here's the point. They never went up the road to find out why these bodies were floating down the river in the first place, which all the different things they did as far as this private charity is concerned is excellent, wonderful. They did great things. But they also, just as much as anything else, had the responsibility to go back up the river again to find out why the bodies were floating down there in the first place. That is the difference between private charity and justice, social justice. And that's what we need to do in the different issues that we talk about. We need to try to go look at the causes of things. That's what justice does. It looks at the cause of things and try to eradicate things at the cause, as opposed to charity. You have someone who comes to your door starving to death. You're not going to say, well, what's the cause of your hunger here?
Yeah.
You're going to feed them, which is the right thing to do. Then you can go back up.
Well, and he writes that. He said charity is about giving a hungry person some bread, while justice is about trying to change the system so that nobody has excess bread while some have none. Charity is about treating your neighbors with respect. Justice is about trying to get the deeper roots of racism. Charity helping specific victims of war. Justice is about trying to change the things in the world that that lead to war. We're good on one of those.
Yeah.
And in some cases, both of those, but not at the same time. Because I think there are people who, they won't give the bread at the door. It's that I'll throw money at it or I'll give a donation because that means I've done my part. Well, no, you haven't, because it calls for us to be charitable in the way we treat people. And if we can find the source and help, we don't do that, do
And
we?
also, too, a private charity is easier than social justice. Social justice is so complicated sometimes. And we're aware of back Lyndon Johnson declared war on poverty back in the 1960s. I think it was
And caught a lot of heat for that.
Yeah, a lot of that, the anniversary that was just recently,
Yep.
I think. Well, anyway, he did that. And I would have to say that the government social systems that were a part of all that, which are part of Johnstown, I think, even today,
Sure, yeah.
have been a dismal failure.
That's where welfare came from. That's where a lot of other things that were to provide for those that don't have. They became part of this huge bureaucracy. It forgot about its mission of taking care of people. Yeah. Okay, I wanted to ask you examples within your own experiences of that difference between charity and justice.
You know what?
And you would probably see that more than other people would because, forgive me, of the line of work that you're in.
Yeah,
because at times it's a job. I mean, you're a faith leader, but it's a job. You see this kind of stuff all the time.
I think our assistance ministry is more private charity than social justice. Maybe some of you who are watching us, maybe with our assistance ministry, might disagree with all that, and maybe you can help me with all that. But I think that more leans toward that.
I would agree.
But there is an organization here in Johnstown called Bridges Cooperative, which is down, and their offices are at the Franklin Street Church downtown. And they do, I think, social justice.
Is Josh involved in that, or any of the
Josh,
nipples?
I think Josh might be one. I think he might. Josh
refer-
Nipple, you mean? I think he might be involved with that.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. We went to their banquet this year.
The reason I ask that is because you know that movement. They do an awful lot.
Yeah, I wrote some stuff down that they do. They do finance management, job readiness workshops to workplace stability. How not only do you get a job, how do you keep it? How do you do that? Getting ahead. They had something called the Getting Ahead cohort, where they begin to talk to people about emotionally destructive relationships. How do I avoid them in my life? How do I create boundaries? People who live in poverty, that have had trauma over and over and over again. have terrible boundaries. As a matter of fact, they don't even want to have any boundaries. Emotional, they call it emotional trash. How can I get rid of the emotional trash in my own head? And another organization that we could spend an entire hour on that does social justice and maybe some charity, of course, is Homeboy in Los Angeles. I mean, how many of you read Greg Boyle's books? On
Read Greg Boyle's books, and they're amazing. The way they recognized. In fact, I kept thinking of them during this fire stuff, and hoping that the ministries are surviving out there. But they recognize that whole homeboy industries was created because Greg Boyle understood it's not enough to just say, here's a handout, here's some food. They need to reconnect them to society, and they took the people that are being virtually ignored. And Boyle, the voiceless. And yes. Boyle risked an awful lot by doing what he did. The fact that he lived through the early parts of Homeboy is amazing to me, because he deals with, the creme de la creme of the bad boys in gangs.
Yeah, he does.
And
murderers.
The success story of the people that have come through that. But that's an example of that social justice private charity. Yeah. Great there, but we don't see that on a broad scale, do we?
Yeah. That is one of the broadest. There's no larger intervention program for gangs in the world.
Stevie was.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure, but Russ said Pat Logston.
Oh, Pat Logston. He's a friend of mine. Deacon Pat Logston lived up in New York City.
This is brother.
Russ. Susie put it on, but it was Russ.
Russ knew Deacon Pat Logston. He lived with ex-cons, drug addicts, alcoholics up in New York. And it was a shelter that they could stay in for 6 months. And the first thing they did is showed them how to get a job. They got a job. And they would save the money. There was no rent there. So they would save the money for them so they can get a place to stay. And then once they got the place, they can come back for dinner periodically and different things. So they kind of kept in touch with them. But they're absolutely Russ. Pat Logston, one of my heroes in my life, one of my great friends, who was murdered, by the way, by one of the residents of Anthony House. That's the place he ran up in Long Island. And he was murdered back in, I think, 2018. And I was on my way to the Alpha weekend when I found out that he was murdered. He was stabbed to death by one of the residents.
Did that end that program?
Yes, it did.
See, there's an example.
Yeah. It doesn't exist anymore.
But see, there's an example of this, social justice we tried. No.
And did great work.
And it might have been an individual who had, I don't know if you know the person who murdered him. And
he's in jail now, I know that.
Whether this was somebody with a mental illness or whatever.
Sure.
But that's not a reason to say, well, see, this is why I don't do that. But that would be I'll bet you that would have been the reaction from most folks. See what happens when you do that kind of stuff?
Deacon Pat, he was a monk. I met him at a monastery. And he's about 2 or 3 years older than me. I think he's Russ. I think he's your age. With all that, he was about to get out of it, and he was going to try to go live in a trailer or something and work in prisons. He wanted to get out of what he was doing and work in prisons because it was like 24/7 job all the time, and never made it. Never made it to do that. But these are examples, Homeboy.
Yeah, that's my point.
And Bridges and Deacon Pat, Anthony House. All of those are examples of justice. Yes.
And it's something that virtually, I think it's fair to say, gets ignored. We don't live like that. We don't have people that think like that. Yeah. We do have some. Steve did some help. He said at the Women's Help Center, he was in there doing some, assisting or stuff. There are organizations that are out there doing it. Catholic Charities does what it can, but I think we just give up. Again, we throw something at it. We don't really cultivate.
Let me do a shout out to Helping Hands, which is the organization Norman Ed runs that does Hosanna Industries, another one. And then Joseph's Hands, Rick Bowser's organization here in the parish. They do a lot of work to try to help people get back on their feet. So it's a lot of justice issues that they do.
Well, serve other Saturdays too, I think, right? Serve other Saturdays with.
That's something that we do here. Well, I used to say I did a lot of work for St. Vincent de Paul, helping them. Not working, but events and hosting, emceeing dinners and stuff. those folks do what they do, and they never talk about it. They don't go out and bang the drum and tell you what the wonderful, and I would always say when I was at their annual dinner, and I would say, I have so much respect for you folks because you're doing great work, but you are not standing on the street corner saying, look at us, look at us.
And I would say assistance ministry is the same way. I bet.
Oh, I guarantee you.
Anybody would be hard pressed to even name who's in assistance ministry.
I was just going to say, I don't know any of the people that are in the assistance ministry.
Yes, you do.
Okay, but I mean, yeah, I understand that.
But you don't know that they're in it.
But I don't, and it doesn't matter to me when I put money in the basket at the end of every month. It's just because I'm thinking, I know, it's not, oh, I'm a hero. No, that's not it at all. There's a place, and I don't do it in an envelope system. It's anonymous. I just put, because I don't care about, that's not why I do it. I do it because I'm thinking, I know they're doing that kind of work.
And Sherry, you're right about Dorothy Day, of course.
There you go.
Talk about her tomorrow a little bit in my homily. Dorothy Day would have done both private charity and social justice.
Now, there's a woman that had a remarkable life. If you look back at some of what she was involved with before,
I agree.
I mean,
fascinating person. The book I'm going to quote from tomorrow is called "Unruly Saint." I forget who the author is. If you go on Liturgy of the Word tomorrow, you can find it. Unruly Saint, but a good read about Dorothy Day.
Let me just throw out a little plug out there. St. Francis University has a Dorothy Day Center.
Yes, they do.
And I take, my wife and I both, in fact, I got a load on the car right now. I take my clothing, and in my case, I go through shirts and suits and stuff. So, but I take it there because they don't sell it. It's free. If you need clothing, you come to Dorothy Day and they provide it. They don't stand on a hill and bang the drum and tell people. But I think that's remarkable. I mean, there are other agencies. You all know the ones with the bigger names and the things that they do. But these folks just do this.
You know, it's funny. I wrote down in my notes, bridges. That's all I could think of. And then all of a sudden, homeboy, Dorothy Day.
There are organizations.
Everything, all me just Deacon Pat, my good friend, and which I pray to every single day. I pray to him every single day. Just keep me going here, Lord. But all these things we just thought of. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
We had a fairly benign 21 minutes, so now it's time to, because when this came up, when I was reading this, I went, oh, okay, but it's important to talk about it. I mean, you cannot say the word abortion, and then it starts a little fire line, and there's people on both sides of it, right? But let's just take for what Father Rolheiser wants us to get out of this. And he wrote this: despite the bitter rhetoric, this is on page 170.
I know the thought. Yep.
Okay. Despite the bitter rhetoric that often exists between those who favor legalized abortion and those who oppose it, nobody wants abortion, and everyone on both sides recognizes that whenever an abortion happens, something is far from ideal. Now, let me just say, when it says nobody wants abortion, we're not talking about the right to choose. We're talking about nobody says, I want to end the life of whether you believe it's a child or not, and we could get into that. So he's just making the point. This isn't something that we do. I mean, but we, we recognize something happened here that maybe shouldn't have happened. That doesn't mean in every case. I mean, sometimes maybe it did need to happen. But the point is that you look at it, and it's bitter rhetoric on both sides. But if you tear it down, if you pull the, what's it when you peel an onion, and you go down and you get down to the base, it's a little. The core is a little different, right? Would you agree?
Well, I think what he's trying to say here, it's kind of funny. This book was written about 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's the point that got me too. It was written. It was prophetic in a lot of ways.
I think some folks are a little bit on the Agron side today. I don't know. I will go with what he says. I'll go with what he says here with all this, and it's far from ideal. And then he goes on to say, on this particular page, he goes on to say, because something is wrong with the system. Anytime there's an ending, an abortion, something is wrong with the system. And basically what he's saying is, at the core, we all see something is not quite right. And then he kind of goes on to talk about all that. So, like, for example, the economic system. Now, I know there are people that have abortions that are pretty well off. But then again, by and large, I didn't look up the statistics. Anybody wants to throw them at us, that'd be okay. How many of the people who have abortions are poor and trapped by an economic system that keeps them poor and trapped. So I mean, that's issue number one with all this. And I think the way Jesus wants us to attack social justice issues, which by the very definition of a social justice issue, is let's get at the core. You know, we can go out there with our placards and kind of yell and scream at each other with all that. And oftentimes we do use the same kind of rhetoric back and forth, given and both of them, I think, are wrong in many ways, the way they deal with the issue. Let's get at the core. Now, economically, we got a problem. Politically, you know, I don't know what people think. You guys are here with me, and I think the Republicans, in their extremist position on abortion,
Maybe we
did
say
tremendous harm.
maybe we could say the far right.
Far right.
Of
Excuse
that.
me.
I don't want to
Excuse me.
blame all.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you.
You know, because there
I
are
appreciate that.
right. It's far right, far left. It's not mainstream.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree. So the far right and what they wanted to do with abortion caused a reaction on the far left.
Sure.
That made the rhetoric between these two extreme groups and the rest of us in the middle are somehow floundering. The rest of us, I think, are reasonable, are floundering and trying to figure out, you know, how we get to deal with this, because it just caused a reaction. That
Well,
was
sure.
very,
That's
very
why
serious.
politically, when they did surveys, and they found all that you know, most Americans support the right to an abortion. It was about a woman's right. It wasn't about the questions that faith brings into the whole equation. And part of it came because they said, you know, you have the absolute right to do whatever you want to do, and we're going to take it away from you, because that's where the hard right went, right? And the average person went towards the left because the left fought back and said, you can't tell us what to do. And a lot of women, especially, because that's who it impacted, would think about that and go, wait a minute, who are you guys to be telling me what I'm going to do? So that's what happened. That's the world that exists. The moral question, and listen, I am someone who, and you and I have had this conversation before, Catholic or not, I support a woman's right to choose because I believe she has the right to determine her own, you know, within her own body. And it's not about
She
the right.
can choose all she wants, but she's got consequences.
But and I don't, and I'm not saying. My point though was that was where I morally, I mean, I personally am opposed. I had a situation where a relative was, you know, because of stage of life of pregnancy and stuff, was thinking about, should we try to end this, because it really, the health issues were big. And it was like, you know, they're asking for advice, and I'm thinking, oh man, I don't know. There's a part of me that said, well, maybe if you try to have the child, and if you could put it up for adoption. And then I'm thinking, but now you're putting your own life at risk.
Well, see, a lot of that is anecdotal. I wonder how much that really is.
But the doctors had told them, because of the
I've heard that a
age.
million times.
I know.
I know.
But still, that's a question. And, you know, I can't think for them because
No.
I'm not there. I'm not that person. The point I'm trying to make is you're trying to make those decisions, and it's not about, you know, it becomes a political issue. No, it's not a political issue. It's a tough, and I agree with you. I think there's many more women have abortions who they're trapped. They got pregnant. They didn't plan on getting pregnant. They can't support themselves, let alone, you know, supporting someone else. And this is going to be bizarre, but I remember having our, what did we call them then, pre-Cana classes. Now, this is 50-some years ago, and Monsignor O'Toole at St. Clement's is saying, well, you can't use any kind of birth control. If you're going to have 20 kids, you're going to have 20 kids. And I said, and I remember looking at him going, are you going to help me pay for those 20 kids? You know, I mean, because it was a decision.
Irresponsible to say such a thing.
I know. And what my point was, we hear a lot of that kind of stuff, and it takes away from the core of what we're really talking about. It becomes you know.
But I can say to you that since we're about low contraception, that there are many families in the parish right now who use natural methods of birth control. Excuse me. Contraception is completely different from birth control.
Birth control.
Yeah, completely different.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, so I mean, some of these are very, very difficult. And so I think we as the church have to be able to be there to help people. I think some people are really trying to do that.
Right.
most especially. And then, okay, so there's political issues and there's the economic issues. And then he goes on to talk about, Rolheiser does, he goes on to talk about the whole sexual culture in which we live.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah,
when he
and,
got to
and
that.
he's more true about that than ever before. Somebody called this the Aphrodite culture, that I believe I'm allowed to have sex anytime I want to, no matter what I want to do it, and with any consequences. If there's any consequences, I'm allowed to eradicate them anytime I feel like it. And it's almost like that's a culture in which we live. And again, we're influenced by these cultural things. We're influenced by these things. And he takes that on.
Yeah, he says there could be no peace, universal prosperity, equality, harmony between the sexes, and proper respect for the environment until there is, in other words, till we live within, I'm on the wrong quote. Sorry, I jumped ahead there. It's acceptable for men and women to have sex with each other. No way are they committed to each other. They don't want to have children. Politically, that system, abortion, is inevitable. He's basically saying in the system that we now live in, kids are having sex younger and younger and younger, and the consequences be damned.
And so have a pill. What percentage of abortions now are by a pill that nobody has any statistics over? And I think it's 30%. I think somebody can help me with all that. Now, Renee just jumped in. I think patients and physicians should make the choices together. Not a political one, but it is a spiritual one. It is a religious one. It is something that we have to take care of by God. God has to be part of the equation in all of that. If we have a relation with God, I just can't say the doctors. And Renee, I know you're a doctor, but doctors have been proven to be wrong themselves, and they have their own opinions on these things too. And sometimes their opinions are swayed by their politics and everything else as everybody else's. But where does God fit into this conversation about life? And I think it has to be one with all of us. And as Betty says, it takes away the sacredness of sexuality. Yeah. I mean, sexuality is meant in our tradition and our culture to be a confirmation of a vow. And it's almost like that's lost. Every time I have a pre-married couple come in and talk, that's my whole conversation with them. And half of my conversation was about sex, because sex is really kind of important. We're going to talk about sex next week. I don't want to.
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
No, please go ahead.
But the whole idea of sex is to confirm a vow. And if I've even made a vow, what's the point of sex? I know in my old age, if I'm having sexual relationships with somebody, I'm going to be with them the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. I know it means all of that because I have seen, if sex is just between two people just having fun, why is adultery a game changer? Why is that so serious? Such an incredible violation of a relationship if sex doesn't matter, if it, at all. And why does sex so important that it can conceive a child if it's not that important? And we're so casual about it. Anyway, that's just I know I'm kind of ranting a little bit there, but who are the most voiceless among us right now in my mind? And I read that article that I put in the bulletin, and I was saying that never am I opposed to women's rights, never women's rights. But where do I ever hear in the media about the right of a child? I never hear that. Never.
Okay, I didn't want to cross this line, but you just did. So when you say right of a child, a child that is where it's going to go, a born individual or in the womb?
In the womb.
And part of the discussion there is, and I really don't want to go through this, but it's, is that a human person or not a human person?
How convenient of us.
No.
We want to get rid of it, that it's not a human person. How convenient.
No, because there's...
Yes, it is. Why wouldn't it not be?
Well, it's the same reason when you just said about, doctors sometimes diagnose based on their opinion. And I'm thinking, I vehemently disagree with that conclusion. I'm just telling you, I understand that they're trying to just take all the information, but they're not making it.
Women, do doctors bully you?
The doctors who treat me for cancer, if they're making
that's different. When it comes to women, do doctors bully you?
Steve,
just quickly, Renee responded back to a few of your comments. She said, "I agree. God is part of the answer, not a congressman."
I agree with that.
And she also said, "Please, in the name of justice, support the child after birth."
Of course.
And there,
course,
and
of
there,
course.
I agree. There's where, but I'm just making the point. I'm not talking about your opinion, my opinion. I'm talking about there is that division about whether or not, and before birth, whether it's a person or not. I told you, I'm personally opposed to abortion. I think it's morally wrong, and I do believe that human life begins at conception. But there's enough evidence with big air quotes that will go back and forth on that. That's not the point.
I don't believe there is a lot of evidence.
Well, that's what I'm telling you.
There isn't.
There's scientific. There are people. Okay, we got to get
people
off
that
this.
say
We got to
those
get off of
things.
this, and we're just going to sit here and talk about this. Somebody else telling us to get off
what
of
is
it.
the baby? What is the baby?
What did Renee say?
She said, "I'm such a rabble rouser."
Yeah, she just stirred it all up. Thank you, buddy.
When did we say a baby is viable today? 4.5 months, maybe. Renee, you would know that. 4.5 months or something.
You're talking about
They're viable. 4.5 months, right?
Okay.
Are we killing them then?
Yeah.
What's the difference between killing them then and killing them after 3 months? It's the same. It's the same living being.
See, this is why when I came up to this in the book,
Let's suppose
when this came up in the book, I thought I don't want to go here because I know what's going to happen, and I'm not trying to shut you off, but we do have more things to talk about because it is so controversial. Here's the part that I don't like: we're not worried about taking care of kids. I don't care if they're still in the womb or they're born. No, we're not. We are ignoring.
They're saying move on.
Yes, we are ignoring youngsters that need help from birth. Whatever.
who's ignoring them?
Society ignores them. They don't get the
Well,
kind
they ignore the
kids
ones
are
in the
being
womb,
born
they
and
ignore
they're being
ones
born.
afterwards,
Well,
they
they're
ignore
they're
them
being born into poverty. I mean, come on, you can't deny that. Whatever. It's time to move on.
But we're not ignoring them here. I'm not ignoring them.
I'm not saying you're ignoring them. I'm just saying society doesn't take care of people. You know the story of kids that are born and we do stories all the time. There's a little 3-year-old because their parents are doing drugs and they're wandering the street. Okay.
I get all that. That's a social justice issue, exactly the same as what we're talking about here.
All right, let's go. Because here's something else he said. There could be no peace, universal prosperity, equality, harmony between the sexes, and proper respect for the environment until there is universal justice. That is, until the systems we live in are made to be fair and respectful of everyone and everything. And I think that's been the basis of a lot of what you've been saying tonight. And we don't do that.
And we'll bring up one more: capital punishment. Where is that something that somewhere along the way is equitable? And there's a social justice, like there's nobody that's middle class that's on the death row, I don't think. I think pretty much, across the board, there might be somebody there that way. But by and large, that's the poor. And that's the very, very broken who are on death row with all that. And also, too, I just want to say this one thing about being equitable. I think one of these days we have to go through, we talk about these immigrants being illegal coming into the United States. And somewhere along the way, we have to get down and outline how hard it would be to become what's the process for becoming a citizen of the United States? Do you realize how it is the most arduous and difficult thing?
It's not easy.
The average person, average poor person looking for a better life couldn't possibly do anything like that.
Yeah, it's much different. And the part that we talked about this before we were on the air.
It's not a good system.
We think about grandparents. I mean, my great-grandparents, my great-grandmother, actually, she would have been my grandmother, I think, on my mother's side. My mother's mother emigrated from Ireland in the late 1800s and settled in Cleveland, Ohio, and raised a family and all that. Because it was what people did. They were looking, like we were talking before, there's a reason that Statue of Liberty stands in New York Harbor.
Yeah.
And it's like it used to be, it would be hard to find people within this parish that don't have a tie back to another country because that's where right?
I don't know the answer to this. When you went through Ellis Island,
Well, I didn't.
what was required?
There was very little. I mean, look, they changed. I mean, you basically had to have
Sign your name?
That's it. And they changed names of people because they said, well, that name's never going to work. Or people, when
They couldn't
my
spell 'em.
when my grandmother, the Radovanics came from Croatia, there was an H on the end of our name, Radovanic, and somebody at Ellis Island said, nah, that won't work. That's too many letters. They've already got 9 letters in there. Now you go 10. We'll cut off the H. And it happened. There were people whose names were completely changed because either they didn't know how to spell the whatever. There was no. It's not like it is now.
And of course, nobody's saying for open borders. Nobody's talking about open borders here. We got to deal with all that stuff. But at the same time, here are people just like generations before who are searching for. And I think President Bush Jr. had the right answer to that, but politically couldn't kind of get it through, as is our problem even here today. But I think there's another way in which our systems, our system of immigration, I think is archaic and needs tremendous amount of updating. And I thought that President Bush had the right idea, but of course, and then our politics were so divided with all that we can't seem to get any kind of decent legislation.
Well, and here's what you talk about. We were talking about this before. Is there a problem at the border? For crying out loud, there's a problem at the border. We all know there's a problem at the border, but that doesn't mean that you just stop being the country that we have been since the beginning of time. I mean, this country was formed because people wanted a better life, and they wanted to get out from under the king's dominance in England, and they risked an awful lot.
And
people
violence
seem to think they jumped on a cruise ship and came over here and got off, and everything was, no, it was awful. I mean, and they were so brave to do what they did, and we've lost sight of that.
And I mentioned,
but we're not taking care of people, and we could get into the immigration
and I just mentioned
thing.
the family that we were talking at Christmas back in the sacristy that their 13-year-old grandmother came across from Eastern Europe to the United States by herself.
Yep. Oh, there are lots of stories like that.
Incredible. Wow.
All right.
Incredible.
He talks about a biblical foundation for social justice. So help me out there, because without getting too deep, because we've only got about 13 minutes left.
Okay.
And I want to get through some of that other stuff.
Okay.
But tell me, where is it in the Bible that lays out a plan? You hear that a lot. Well, it's in the Bible. Well, where is it in the Bible? Is there? I don't have a page number for you because I was hoping
I know.
I was hoping you knew, because he doesn't talk about it. He just said there is a biblical foundation. Well, where is it? And what is it?
Well, okay, that's not what I'm looking for there. Okay, yes, it is what I'm looking for. Now, here are some basics. Maybe I could put it this way. If anybody has a book there at page 176, we can't go through all these things. He said, by and large, pretty much every single church agrees with these basic principles of social justice. For example, number one, all people in this world have equal dignity and should enjoy equal rights in terms of respect, access to resources, and access to opportunity. Number two, God intended the earth for all persons equally. Thus, the riches of this world should flow equally and fairly to all people. Now, that doesn't happen today at all. I think we're getting worse at it as we go. All other rights, including the right of private property and accumulation of riches, that are fairly earned, subordinate to this primary principle that there needs to be a fair, equitable distribution of goods.
But number one, all people in this world have equal dignity and should enjoy equal rights in terms of respect, resources, and access to opportunity. That's a great bumper sticker, but it's not true.
It doesn't happen. No.
That's my point, and I think that's what he's trying to say. Like, the Bible lays it out, and we just ignore it, and we've ignored it for decades, right?
Right.
And whose fault is that? It's all of us, isn't it?
Well,
because we haven't demanded that.
I think it's us as Christians. I think we haven't lived it.
Yep. No, we haven't. We haven't
lived it. That's why there. Another one. The right of private property and the accumulation of wealth is not an absolute one. Now, we in our culture think it is an absolute one.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
And I have a right to everything. Like some of these athletes that get paid millions and millions of dollars. Share it, dude. Share it with somebody.
Well, I mean, you can see that there's a lot of money that's being thrown around, and it's not, and it will always happen because the money is there, and money makes you better. I mean, money makes you more popular. Money gives you whatever you want. Steve was just talking about the two teams in last year's World Series. They had payrolls of New York and Los Angeles. I don't know what their total team payrolls were, but for crying out loud, and they're still hitting a baseball with a wooden bat, right?
But we promote it,
Yeah, we do promote it.
There's the culture and actually promoting it.
And let me just let me get into a part where I'm not picking at you, but your Catholic Church, our Catholic Church leaders.
That's better.
Okay, but they jump into politics. They do all the time.
Well, they
and it's like,
should jump in the sense as
But-
Christians.
but they jump in to be on one side against the other. And it's like,
That's-
what are you doing?
that's a
How
problem.
can we as Catholics talk about social justice when the leaders of our church are issuing demands upon us? You should follow and vote for these people because what are you doing? Don't do that. Don't tell me that.
We should always engage politics in a sense of an independent in the fashion that we're engaging it to understand that Christ would have us live in our lives.
I'm sorry, I jumped in. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We got time for a couple more.
No person, group of persons, or nation may have a surplus of goods while others lack basic necessities. We know that happens all the time.
Yeah.
We're obliged morally to come to the aid of those in need. Helping the poor is not an issue of personal virtue or generosity, but something that demands of us of the very order of things. Or I'm in the middle of a sentence here. May not be seen as morally inviolate, and must be, okay, I jumped. The law of supply and demand, free enterprise, unbridled competition, profit motive, private ownership, and the means of production may not be seen as morally inviolate and must, when the common good justice demands it, be balanced with other principles. Here's another one. Movement toward the poor is a privileged route toward God and toward spiritual health. When there is no real involvement with the struggles of the poor, conversely, riches of any kind are very spiritually dangerous for us. We need to be engaged on some level, all of us, in the lives of others who are struggling to make things. So there's some of the principles I think he's talking about.
Yeah. Okay. And he also, then he starts to write about what he calls our naivete, saying it can be summarized in some fallacies that too frequently permeate justice and peace groups. I just want to do the first one because I think that will set the table here.
It's important.
The urgency of my cause is so great that it's okay in this instance for me to bracket the normal laws that govern public discourse. Hence, I can be disrespectful, arrogant, and ugly toward those who oppose me. Period. Amen. Bingo. That's our life today.
Yeah, that's you guys were talking before we got on the air. Social media is very much that way. And we're talking about people getting their lives ruined because of social justice in many ways. And I think that's where we are able to do that in many ways, which is really kind of a sad thing.
Well, yeah, because people are, we're all going to be. Social media has allowed us to be incredibly arrogant, disrespectful, angry. Steve made the point, and I've heard it, he didn't say this, but it's one of the best descriptions of some people who get on social media and start. Some guy sitting in a basement of his mother's house in his underwear and he's anonymous, and he's just putting all this stuff out on his computer, and that thought is, it's not one you want to have in your head rolling around a lot, but it's accurate. We don't talk to each other. We just slash and attack and burn, and we do it on our computers, and damn with the consequences, because there are none. Right. I won't say what happened, but I got a comment from a viewer, the television station I work for, who sent something to me, and I will give the man credit. I mean, what he said was not the nicest thing a person could have said, but he did it with his name. Most people don't. Most people will send stuff, because we do that as a society now. We're nameless. We can hurt. I can send. Facebook is a great one. I tell this all the time. Do you know what I could say about you? I could go on and post tonight about you and your past, which you've talked about not frequently. You haven't given us detail, but I could make up a whole bunch of stuff, and there'd be nothing you could do about that.
Right. Nothing.
That's not justice, is it?
No. All right. Let me ask.
All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You want to go back to people online?
Russ said,
Brother Russ,
citizenship takes 18 and 24 months longer than and plus money. Now, Lisa said, immigrants from 80 years ago aren't the same as they are now. They're looking for something totally different.
I don't think you can make a general statement like that. I completely disagree with that.
I don't know what you meant by that. I was just asking you to clarify that real quickly for us. People hide behind the computer screen. Marty, thanks for calling me out.
Someone's going to talk about the guy in his underwear.
Anyway, another one of these different naivetes about I may exaggerate and distort the facts a bit to make the case just as clear, but the situation is so horrendous that I need not be very scrupulous about exact truth. And I think I do that kind of stuff ourselves. And I'm a victim, and thus I can operate outside the rules will be another one. So these are different things that he is saying that we're naive about, and we do in our conversations about this stuff. that we need to be able to stop doing and all of that. And then he talks about the prescription for nonviolence, which I talked about this morning.
Yes,
in
you did. And
my adult ed class.
Oh,
I did. And we went
I'm
into
sorry, yeah,
detail in my adult ed class about.
because nonviolent, think of one thing. What's coming up a week from tomorrow? It's Martin Luther King Day.
Okay. Yeah.
And please don't get into the racial or
Oh,
political,
no way,
but he was he was an advocate of finding nonviolent solutions, which we don't even think
We've
about
lost that,
anymore.
yes.
We've lost that skill, and that's what it is. It's a skill. But go ahead. I'm
So
sorry.
basically, Jesus was saying, "What we have."
You think what Jesus was,
okay.
man. He was a nonviolent peacemaker.
Yeah.
There was no violence. He could have been violent.
in every way. And he goes on to say that Rolheiser does, and it's a very interesting ending to the book, or chapter, excuse me. He goes on to say that Jesus, he talks about, maybe I can offer a quote here kind of quickly, and then I can kind of come back and share this. He goes on to say in this one particular part, he says, we must try to bring about justice and peace as Jesus did, recognizing that the God whom Jesus called Father beats up nobody. God doesn't beat up anybody. God does not punish. He said that because we have something in our culture that shows in the movies and the culture we have, like look at Rambo, I think would be a perfect example of this, of someone who has the right cause, but acts exactly the same as the violators themselves. And so we use violence a lot of times to do our causes that are right. And he goes on to say that the God who Jesus called Father beats up no one. He does not vanquish the bad and vindicate the good through superior muscle power, speed, and sharpshooting with a gun. Jesus takes on the roots of all these things without taking on the very same ways of the violators themselves. And so you and I can be victims or you and I can become victims and then ultimately become victimizers ourselves at the same time.
And that happens all the time. That's one of that's a key of where we are as a society. I'll call you out for something you did, and then I'm going to do exactly what you did, even greater than you did it, because part of it is I go, well, he did it. If he can do it, I can do it. Well, we have that in our society.
And I'm right and you're wrong.
Well, of course. And that's what happens. It's like we've lost sight. And, I have friends who say, well, every time you talk about Jesus, were you there? No, I wasn't there. But I have a pretty good...
You don't have to be there.
I didn't have to be there. I know that what we know of him that was written and is lasted
and
through
he does
time,
reveal himself.
it does appear, it's not appear, no, it doesn't appear. It is pretty obvious that the man was nonviolent.
Non-violent.
You know?
Absolutely
Now,
non-violent.
does that mean that there never is a cause for countries to go to war against each other? That's a totally different. There are.
It's very complex.
It does get, but I'm just saying, there's no. Well, Jesus never would have gone to war, so we should. Well, no.
Here's the difference. Let's suppose here's me. I'm a single guy, right?
Yep.
I'm a single guy. Let's suppose somebody is going to shoot me or something for something. Now, I have more of an opportunity to be nonviolent as opposed to, imagine you 30 years ago, someone breaks into your home and is going to perpetrate, kill your family. Should you kill this person if you can rather than killing your family? I think so.
Well, I'll tell you, 30 years ago, if I'd have done that, I'd have been the one that would have been charged.
Well, you're talking culture now. You kind of shifted to
you're saying, should I? No, I'm telling you, I don't think I could have done that 30 years ago.
And you're missing my point.
Okay,
Help
me out.
My point is simply, I'm building up a moral straw man here. I'm saying this doesn't have to skip the culture.
Okay. I got you.
Would it be morally correct for you would it be morally correct for you to defend your family? The answer is yes, as opposed to someone like me who has no family.
Exactly. So
I would be more opportunity to be nonviolent in that situation than a father of a family or a mother of a family.
Okay, I got you.
Defending
I
the
got
family.
you.
That's what I was trying to say.
Maybe this is it. I didn't. It's funny. It's like you must have even just led. You must have known this was coming up in the notes. We must Rolheiser. We must be careful particularly in trying to create justice and peace, not to confuse the Christian story of redemption with the myth of redemptive violence.
Right. That's what we were talking about before.
You know, don't we
Yeah,
do that,
yeah,
though,
yeah.
as a society?
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of like this guy breaking into your house, you know, that, well, it's redemption because it would, no, Christian redemption. No, that it's different. It's that's a cause and effect of societal. I don't want to
He's
call
talking
them
about redemptive violence. Is I can go out and I can do violence to you because you were doing violence to me.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and so he was saying that we can't be doing that. That's nonviolent. But then again, defending we jump into a whole different category.
Because if you say things like that, though, this is part of the world we live in as well. It's like, well, I have the right to say that. You can't tell me that I can't say this. Like, wait a minute. And then it goes beyond that.
Yeah.
The gospel of Jesus makes the non-negotiable demand that we work for justice and peace in the world, but does not demand that we win.
Because we haven't won. Yeah, that's correct. Mother Teresa one time said, the issue is not being successful. The issue is being faithful.
And we're not.
We're called to be faithful.
And we're not, are we?
Well, let's try to be more faithful with all this.
One thing, if you get the book, and I wish everybody would, if for no other reason, it's on page 189. It's called His Lord's Prayer for Justice.
Worth reading.
Oh my! And it just, let me just give you the way that he kind of, what he does is he takes the Lord's Prayer and he kind of uses it as a base, and then he kind of twists it a little bit. But just the opening segment, if you don't listen or read or know anything else, listen to this, where he says, "Our Father, who always stands with the weak, the powerless, the poor, the abandoned, the sick, the aged, the very young, the unborn, and those who by victim of circumstance bear the heat of the day." That's what we're supposed to believe in, right?
Yeah, these are the principles of justice
that we should have in our everyday, but we don't, do we?
We sort of learned this one that keeps score all the time. I don't know where we got that guy, but we did somehow.
Well, yeah, because, you know,
that's just our Father. What's the second one say?
All right. The next, he said,
"Our Father
who art in heaven, where everything will be reversed, where the first will be last, the last will be first, but where all will be well and every manner of being will be well. Hallowed be thy name. May we always acknowledge your holiness, respecting that your ways are not our ways, your standards are not our standards. May the reverence we give for your name pull us out of the selfishness that prevents us from seeing the pain of our neighbor." Do you want me to keep going?
No, that's good enough. That's good. That's good.
But I mean, this whole prayer, and Steve's sitting over there nodding.
And that meditation with it.
You heard it, right?
Yep.
You listened. You have the audio book. All right.
Well, and there's some comments there. I know we don't got much.
No, we have
left. I
time.
don't
Go,
know if you
go.
want to.
Go.
Which one you got? You got one?
Well, Lisa responded back about the immigrants. I don't know if you want to read that.
From 80 years ago,
Yeah.
we're looking for work and providing a better life for the family. Some immigrants totally are looking to come here for free. Lisa,
The only point I want when I said no is that no, they're coming. A lot of people are coming here for opportunity. Are they all coming for that? No,
That's the
they didn't all
rhetoric.
come back in. You know,
that's the rhetoric you're hearing from some people. I think it's exactly the same.
positional thing.
It's exactly the same. Escaping. I think it's just exactly the same. I don't think it's anything.
Any other comments over there, Steve? Any other?
Just that Renee also about Martin Luther King, peaceful protest with a strong heart. And Chris said on page 174 quotes Matthew 25:31, "Whatsoever you do for the least of these, you do for me." About social.
And that is
justice.
one that we just don't, as a society, we forget that. You know, and the way we treated it when the rest of that, when he said, "Well, when did I not clothe you?" And who was naked that I didn't clothe? And you didn't. I didn't do that to you. I know who you are. I never would have let that happen. That's the point. You know who I am. It's not about me, right? But isn't that our society today?
Yeah, sure.
Now you have to help me here because you wanted to do this. So next week is Rolheiser's chapter on sexuality.
I will say this to this chapter. I'm a celibate, and this chapter helped me tremendously to understand sexuality. It is very, very important what he's trying to say here. He's not moralizing a lot, but he's trying to explain what sexuality is. And he offers some excellent things about that, which I think we should hear because, again, we get so caught up in what the culture is saying about it that we're so confused about sexuality. It's beyond the pale. He's going to say some things, I hope, will make you go, oh, that's what's going on here. That's what this is all about. And it did help me a great deal in my own life in trying to be able to navigate, because we're all sexual beings.
Right.
As a matter of fact, as he says, which is the truth, I think, in all this, everything we do is a sexual act. Us conversating right now in all of this is a sexual act in the sense that we're relating to one another. That's what our sexuality is all about.
And the only reason I ask you to do this, I don't want people to say, well, they're going to talk about sex on Follow Your Faith. You know,
We're going to talk about it.
well,
but
we are, but I mean, we're, you know,
Mature
in
audience.
today's culture, you know, I mean, just think that's going to be the headline, and people are going to go, well, what are they? No, there's
it's going to be good. It'll be good.
No,
It'll be healthy.
you go ahead,
wait,
Steve.
I'll wait for your plot. You know what we're gonna name the next session.
Yeah, thanks. I figured you would do that to me. I was going to tell you, why don't you pick the name for next week? But you wouldn't know that. I know
You're
that.
the expert.
Comes
This will
back
be
on me,
very,
right?
very
Producer has
healthy
to
for
come
us.
up with the magic word. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate
Very
that.
healthy
All right.
for
At
us.
this point, we can say adios.
See you later, folks. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your comments
Yes.
on all this.
Yes.
It was really worthwhile to talk about these things. Hopefully, we made you think about some stuff, and me too. Think about some stuff. Goodbye now.
Have a good night.